It comes and goes. We're out here chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Becky McNetton, along with host Tara Martini. We are so glad to have you listening today as we live and share stories of mental health. First, Tara, it's exciting to see you today. I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks.
I know, I missed
Welcome
you so
back.
much.
We've been asked by so many people, should we express emotions online?
Ugh.
And it is a fantastic topic that we also get asked frequently in our clinical work too. People want to know if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea.
Mhm.
Social media has truly changed the world in all sorts of ways, as you and I know. And wow, does it have an impact on our mental health? So I get why people would be asking us this. Of course, the answer that us therapists all give is that classic, well, it depends.
And it does.
But I really want you and I to explore this today. For those of you who remember, Tara, you're one, way back to Instant Messenger in the late 90s or MySpace in the early 2000s, you might remember a life of learning how to navigate these brand new ways of communicating with people. It was incredible to have the opportunity to chat with other people without having to call them. You remember
Right.
that?
Well, the little fun fact. I never did IM or MySpace. I did not get a phone until I was almost graduating college.
Okay. Well,
So
for
I'm
me,
excited to hear about your
yeah,
experience.
for me, I was so excited about not having to pay long distance to talk
Oh,
with
yes.
people and have
Yep.
phone calls with them. So it says something about the generation that you and I are a part
Yeah.
of. But social media didn't even exist before the mid 90s.
Which is mind-blowing.
Yeah. So if you were a person listening that was an adult at that time, you can easily reflect on a life that literally didn't even have social media available. And that is mind blowing, as you said, when I talk about that to anyone under 20 years old right now who only knows a life with its popular existence. 70% of the US population actively uses social media, and the average amount of time spent daily is 2 hours.
I would think it's even be longer than that. Like
the average.
It's
And the average social media user participant is involved in 6 platforms, 6
Really?
different platforms. We post everything from what we ate for dinner to our biggest life moments.
Yep.
We from our drive to work to our vacations to our inner thoughts and our values. So there's really no getting away from emotions online.
mm-mm.
Every single one of those platforms makes it simple to express emotion and even more simple to repost or like or respond to emotion. But I'm fascinated about whether this actually helps us process emotion or if it swirls in new emotion to what we had already shared or what had existed.
Right.
Kind of like, are we getting what we hoped for from doing it? And what would you say about that?
Mhm. Well, my goodness, this is such a massive topic. And
Yeah.
it's that idea of I love today that we chose to just focus on this one facet, right? Because as an educator who taught before social media and after,
hmm
the differences are profound. That's for another episode. I love that we're simply just looking at emotions and is it a good idea to express those emotions online for the public, to see? And it's that idea of are we getting what we hoped for? It is one of those where we have to think to ourselves. It's that concept and idea of how many times do we not think though when we post about an emotion, right?
Yeah.
So we don't even make a conscious effort to think, boy, am I getting what I hoped for? Sadly, we're posting blindly.
Yeah. We might
Right,
not even
with
know
that-
what we're hoping for.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then it's after the fact when the result comes in, right? Whether we're supported or objectified or refuted,
Yep.
that's when it's like, ooh, that's not what I was hoping for,
That's
right?
Yes.
Or, oh, I feel supported. Okay, that's what I was hoping for.
Well said. I absolutely love this discussion, and we're going to get into it a ton more. Right now, we are going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned for the things you can consider around the role of social media in your life and how to assess your digital wellness. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We will be right back.
Yourself. You gotta find the people Express yourself.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Becky McNatt, along with Tara Martini. Let's get right back into emotions shared on social media. So, Tara, why do we post online? What are your thoughts about emotional sharing?
Oh my goodness. Well, first, I think it's important to distinguish, as I stated in the last segment, that I love that we're focusing on one facet. But even within that facet, that idea of sharing an emotion, I think a lot of people don't think of that and they mistake it for expressing an opinion, which are two different things.
Well said.
Right?
Yeah, well said.
So it's that idea of, well, why do we post online? Many times, yes, we do it to state an opinion. I love this, or I hate this, or whatever it is. And it's stating your opinion, whether it's politics, religion, all the touchy subjects,
Mhm.
right? But we're not talking about that. We're talking about expressing our emotions. I am sad. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am lonely. I am
Mhm.
depressed. I am overwhelmed.
And maybe our emotions about those topics,
For sure.
but not
For sure.
necessarily our opinion about the topics.
Right.
Yeah. From kind of gathering information recently and asking a few people about why do we post online? Why do we post on social media? I kind of saw 4 different reasons: to share, to reflect, to connect, to enjoy. So to
Those
share,
are all great.
we're bringing content to others that we feel important,
Mhm.
that we feel is important. To reflect, we're highlighting things that we're thinking about. We're highlighting things that we're doing. We're wanting to bring people into those, which leads to that third thing of connect. We want to nurture relationships and build community for ourselves. And then ideally, I think social media is meant to enjoy. It's the idea of it as an entertainment,
Right.
and we think it's fun. But I wanted to, in the emotional sharing on social media, think about the generational component here. We sort of
Oh.
highlighted when in the mid-90s it wasn't even in existence.
Yeah.
The percentage of US adults who use social media increased from 5% in 2005 to 79% in 2019.
That's insane.
Yes, 5% in
What?
2005 to 79% in 2019. And if you break this down by age group, 45% of adults over 65 years old use social media, and 84% of 18 to 29-year-olds do. If 5% of adults in the US were using social media in 2005, and we leap to 79% 15 years later, we are talking about a massive difference between the age groups and how they'll see social media. And of course, you and I both know you're a teacher. So if we add teenagers in the mix and you
Oh.
taught teenagers, the Surgeon General says that 95% of teens use social media,
Mhm.
nearly all of them. And 46% of teens in the US say they are on the internet almost constantly, literally all day long.
Mhm.
With
Doesn't surprise me.
with teens spending on average almost 5 hours every single day on social media.
Mhm.
So, of course, then you and I have bias here on whether we should be processing emotion through social media, because as we said earlier, we're part of an age group that knows life without it.
Mhm.
We have lived experience of processing emotions, not having that outlet of posting and reposting or liking. What are your
Yep.
thoughts on this?
Well, and oh my goodness, so many thoughts. The first one that popped into my mind was that idea of people, adults, us,
Mm-hmm.
when we felt a certain way, whatever that emotion was, we went to the people who lived in our home, or we picked up a phone with a cord attached to the wall and we called
Yeah.
a friend or a relative, mostly
Yes.
a friend,
Yes, we did.
right? And that is, to me, when we express that emotion with people in our house or over the phone, chances are we were going to get a response that was supportive in nature, right? It's definitely a more controlled environment because you're speaking to people who love you, who are already connected, who already have all those things like you listed before.
Mhm.
Think of it now with teens and adults and all of us with social media. It is the furthest from a controlled environment.
Mhm.
So it isn't, I know the 6 people who I'm posting to on Facebook about me being angry, and then that's going to probably give me more support. Instead, it's I'm throwing it out there for thousands of people, and who knows
Yeah.
what I'm going to get in return.
Well, and you bring up a good point there in when you are actively calling somebody, you can decide when it's done too.
Yes.
So you can, if you're not receiving support
Right.
from that sharing
Right.
of emotion, you could decide, I'm done with this. I'm ending
Yes.
this phone call.
Yep.
If we've posted our emotion online, there is not, unless we choose to remove said post, which we'll talk about in a little bit, there isn't an ending to it.
Right.
So it continues to go.
And it doesn't matter if you're at school, if you're at home, if you're on the
Right.
bus, if you're with your family in a cabin, you never escape it.
Right.
Right.
And from people I know, just in the last couple of weeks, I heard from someone who is in their mid 60s that social media is so fun to see pictures of their friends traveling during wintertime when they are separated. So really cool comment.
Yep.
And then no joke, I'm not kidding. The same day, I heard someone in their 20s say to me, social media is the most ruthless place ever. They went on to say people lie on social media a lot, and there's no way to find the truth. Now that's a spectrum.
And both those things are truth,
That's a
right?
huge spectrum. Yeah. And it got me thinking that maybe it's because these two people are exposed to completely different emotional content.
For sure.
What
For
would you-
sure. So what do I think about it? It's that idea of, because I think also for us, people in their 40s and older, it's the idea of we use Facebook to connect with people.
Mhm.
So it is purely, here's what's going on in my life, right? When I open my Facebook, I know that it's just going to be from people that I know, right? And I'm going to see their experiences, maybe something negative that's happening in their lives, but it's very much a controlled setting in that, okay, it's the people I know, and I am just looking at what vacation they went on, right? Or their
Mhm.
hockey picture,
Right.
or a sweetheart dance they just had last weekend. When it comes to people in our 20s, they are using other mediums. They are using TikTok, Instagram, all those lovely things, and their public profiles.
Mm.
So it isn't just grandma and a cousin or a friend I had in elementary school. It's strangers.
Which makes a difference on who's seeing your emotional
Right.
processing.
And
yeah.
because of that, it opens the opportunity for it to become extremely ruthless. And I have seen firsthand since social media came out
Yeah.
how truly ruthless
Yeah.
and horrific it can get.
And then on the other side, how positive it can be. And your own-
100%.
that from that emotional sharing and space for connection and reflection, as we mentioned in the beginning. And
Yep.
recently, you and I got together with our coworkers, all of the fellow people at Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness who are clinicians, and we asked the question, should you share your emotions on social media? And it was a very cool discussion. There were, as you remember, Tara, a lot of different opinions.
Strong opinions.
And at Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness, we have people who range in age from early 20s to early 60s. We have folks who are single, married, people with young children, people with teenage children, young adult kids. We have people who love social media and people who don't use it at all. So we have a pretty solid cross section of adulthood.
I think we do. And some of them be surprises as well, right?
Mm-hmm. And we noticed themes that I wanted to talk through in detail around that question of should we process emotions via social media? The first theme that we saw was the function. What's the function of posting? And you highlighted this before our commercial break in the last segment. Really asking ourselves, what am I looking for? And have we even asked ourselves, what am I looking for? Being honest about, is it comparison? Is it to get the word out about something? Is it self-expression? Is it creativity? Is it introspection? Just recently, I was talking with a teenager who said to me, so many people bait for feelings online.
Oh,
I wonder if they know they're doing it. And okay, so what would you say to that?
Amen. How many times, and maybe it's because we're coming from a therapeutic lens or a teacher's lens of How many times do you see on Facebook or Instagram, but mainly Facebook, I think, where someone posts something and says, just when I thought my life couldn't get any harder, or wow, today was a rough day, or whatever, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my initial thought from a therapeutic lens is, oh, that person is missing something and is seeking something from everyone else, right? What they want is, what happened,
Yeah.
right? Why are you feeling this way? And it's that whole like baiting the person
Mm-hmm.
and then, oh, well, here's what happened.
Yeah.
And it is almost formulaic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You post that little hint out there, someone goes for it, and then it begins this conversation, and then your feelings by the second keep getting deeper and deeper and more exposed in that online
In that
environment.
online action. Yeah. Well, I was makes me think about I was talking with a younger than us human
Oh,
a couple of weeks ago who was posting about a conflict with their friend group on social media.
ooh,
And they were telling me about this. And they were sharing about their hurt in the issue and then said something to me about asking for people to weigh in on what a real friend was.
ooh,
And I asked this person, what were you looking for in the responses? And what emotion were you actually processing? Did you know?
wow.
Which leads to another concept within this. What's the function of the post?
Mhm,
Do we know what emotion we're processing?
mhm.
And from what am I hoping for, we might have to know what emotion really are we processing in order to even know what we're hoping for. And
For
this
sure.
person, this younger than us person, really didn't know what they were hoping for. You and
Ooh.
I might guess they were looking for validation.
Mhm,
They were looking for,
mhm,
well, here's what a real friend is, to have some sort
mhm.
of like agreement in what they're,
Yep.
but they didn't know. And so that would be a
Okay.
thing to be asking ourselves, what emotion am I thinking about posting about? Because as the therapist we were talking to said, well, that's real different emotions are real different about posting online. It's super important to be able to identify the difference because grief and loss are really different from anxious anticipation.
For sure.
If somebody says, "Oh, I'm so anxious about my job tomorrow," that is a really different feel
Mhm,
on what you might get as a response
mhm.
from a deep vulnerability.
Right. Well, and just like you said, I think it's so fascinating how that younger adult had said, well, I'm going to ask for people to weigh in on what a real friend was.
Hmm.
Because the part of it, I think about like, wow, that depending on, like you said, they didn't know, but that could provide for a beautiful moment of like, they just needed support or they needed someone to like provide a little guidance.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, but the reality is, for the most time, it's directed at, right, that
Right.
people bashing and people having negative comments and things like that. But it's that whole piece of, are you looking at it from an exploration standpoint, right?
Hmm.
Or is it a validation
Yeah.
standpoint?
And when you say validation standpoint, it makes me think about asking ourselves the question of, am I looking for likes or reposting?
Right.
Do I want
Yep.
people to see my info or do I want to feel seen by
Right.
it? Which are two
Mhm.
different things.
Very different.
And is something getting fed in me by having people like it?
Hmm.
Is that a sense of belonging? Is that a sense of importance or pride in what we're doing, that we're being fed by something in the amount of likes or dislikes or
For
hearts
sure.
or whatever?
And what is that providing us?
Yeah, and the last point that came up in the the what am I looking for? The function of the post was, am I actually hiding from emotions? And
Mm,
this might be an interesting as for listeners to think about. They might be saying, well, this is confusing because I'm not hiding from emotions when I'm posting about them.
mm,
And what we're saying is there is huge capacity to hide in anonymity in our posting.
100%.
And so we may actually be avoiding something by posting something.
Mhm.
And are we seeking to avoid a conversation with someone in person? Are we actually seeking to process something of an emotional content online because we have an avoidance of having the discussion in person?
And now here's this thing that can provide that for me, right?
Yeah.
Because back in our day, it was you addressed it with the person or you didn't address it at all.
Yeah.
Right. You maybe could go to a friend to get advice, but there wasn't any type of outlet,
Right.
to use for it.
Right.
To go back to your piece of, to kind of give a real life example of, do we actually want people to see our info? Do we want to feel seen? That whole piece. So on my grief journey, I will post things on Facebook. And the first time I did it, I didn't realize you can turn off the comments so that you don't get a comment back. And I was inundated with like supportive words and whatever. And most people would be like, oh, I'm sure you just loved that. And I was like, ick, no, no, I don't want words of support and whatever. I just wanted to post. So then I started taking the comments off. So then you can post something. And I was just doing it to be like, hey, I'm sad, right?
Yep.
I'm expressing that emotion. I'm going through grief. But it's all I just needed to do. I just needed to share it. And I loved the idea then that I had control over it, in that people are not needing to comment or respond. I just get to put it in the universe as a cleanse, as a way to heal, because I feel isolated. And it's that idea of, we can do, not to give a tip so early in the show, but one of the things we can do is having a stronger sense of control by doing things like that, where then you're not receiving the critiques and whatever it is.
Right.
Sometimes we just need to share, to let it out of our body, to have a sense of healing and a little bit more peace. And that's one way you can do it if you're still into the whole like social media thing and getting it out there.
Yeah. Well, that transitions beautifully to what the second theme was that we noticed, and why would we be posting on social media? And that's the intention. So we were just talking about the function of the social post, but this is the intention of sharing emotion online. What are the ramifications and impact of what we're sharing? And what might be the contextual outcomes? And are we looking for connection or just a public expression? And I myself am part of a Facebook group that provides resources and connection with people all over the world.
I love that.
I love seeing people share really deep emotion. They are sharing deep emotion with one another all the time, receiving support from a community that has experienced what they have. It's happening. And so the impact of the post is opportunity to be supported by this. It's a closed group who has a shared emotional experience, and we get community that way. So we get to be seen without the critiques, in this, as you mentioned, but in this group, people are offering support via the messages. You can share and express high vulnerability with people who have experienced this same experience you have.
I love that. And you, Becky, never would have otherwise encountered 100% to most of those people.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that.
If I didn't have that.
And what a safe, beautiful way to be on your journey and not feel isolated.
Yep. And, and in that also intention, obviously, if we think about, and someone or people are honest with themselves, there may be actual intention to just make someone else feel bad. What we're looking for is someone to join our anger and shame.
Right.
So we say something to incite that in another person. But that's another aspect of what the function might be. The third thing that came up as a theme is the outcome. And and several of the therapists said, are people thinking about what could happen as a result of this post? Are we walking it through on what the outcomes could be for us as individuals? So I'm thinking like depression, anxiety, jealousy, maybe fear of missing out. What is the outcome comparison? I myself, this was a couple of years ago, I was so sad about a post of mine that didn't get any likes when I thought it was like a really good, I thought it was an awesome post.
Right. I love your vulnerability.
And then a friend of mine would share a post of like their lunch and would get about 100 likes. And that popularity contest, I hated.
Oh.
And I realized that I was posting things I was excited about. But then when other people didn't respond with enthusiasm via likes, I started telling myself that I shouldn't be that excited. And so walking through what's the potential outcome of what we are going to share with people, and what are the benefits and what are the costs?
Right.
And you said just a minute ago, how do we then insulate ourselves
Right.
on what are some actions I could take to potentially mitigate
hmm
certain things or ensure a certain outcome?
hmm
But before we post, to have thought about that, what would you say for that?
Well, my first is a question for you. Did that experience right after impact your postings, like future postings?
It did, yeah, because I started to think about, well, am I prepared for somebody to like not
hmm
enjoy what I'm about to say? I started to tell myself things like people don't actually care what you're saying. And it references this idea of, am I resourced for the cost?
Wow.
Which is what
Yep.
which our fellow coworkers were talking about. What could happen if I share my feelings or experiences publicly, and am I prepared for that? So mostly for me, it was like, I'm not posting anymore.
Right.
I'm not doing it
hmm
because I don't want to expose myself that way.
Right. And that's the whole piece too of you inherently expected a response, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, people are going to notice this
Yep.
and agree with it, thumbs up, heart it, whatever it is.
Yep.
And that is where, when we look at what are the ramifications or impact of me sharing, it is that piece of us, which is it is a learned skill of, before we post, we need to think about, this may not be received well, and am I okay with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because the ramifications can be horrific. And I, again, have seen that firsthand for years.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of, in the midst of doing it, we don't think, right? So it's, what we have to do is take that moment to go, am I okay no matter what the response is?
Yes.
Right? But that is a learned skill. It's something that needs to become a habit. And so I'm always a big fan of like a post-it note, like on your computer or in your room or whatever it is. Just like stop and pause.
Stop and pause. Yep.
Pause before you post.
And I was not aware when I was posting
Mhm.
those couple of things what I was looking for.
Right.
But I learned after the fact, when I was disappointed,
Yes.
that, oh, I clearly had a hope.
Oh, you learned real quick
Learned
when
real-
you saw none, and you're looking at your phone probably like, is there something wrong with it? Did Nika not post
Yes,
it?
right.
You know.
Well, and that leads to the fourth theme that we
Mhm.
noticed. The fourth theme around why do we post our
Mhm.
feelings on social media, our emotions on social media, the state of mind. So asking ourselves some questions, and if and when you post on social media an emotional expression, asking yourself first, am I regulated?
Mhm.
Am I regulated? There's so much intensity, and I don't have to even share any stories about that. Everybody
Right.
listening
Yeah.
knows that's occurring.
Yep.
There is impulsive posting, there is bomb dropping of emotionality, all sorts of things where you can very much tell it is a dysregulated human who is posting about something. And in that dysregulation, they are not going to be able to know what they're hoping for.
Oh, no. And I mean, I think all of us right now, if you're listening, and Becky and I included, could take 5 seconds to think of a time on Facebook or Instagram where you didn't do the posting, but you saw someone that you are friends with on Facebook post something.
Yeah.
And then instantly you think to your head, oh, girl, she just opened a can.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where we know exactly they were doing it when they weren't regulated.
Mhm.
Holy moly. I hope they know what they have gotten themselves
I
into.
just watched this happen. This battle between a couple of people on social
Really?
media, and I'm not sure that either of them felt heard in the end, in the exchange,
Oh.
because they also had then other people weighing in on what their conflict ended up being.
Right.
And sharing vulnerability is literally vulnerable itself. So
For sure.
in that, regulating ourselves first to say, well, is this something I really want to share?
Mhm.
You mention often, am I proud of what I'm sharing?
Mhm.
And something that several of the therapists were talking about is, am I reflecting on action or am I reflecting inaction? Am I
Ooh.
reflecting on something that I have already processed,
Hmm.
something that has occurred that I have a sense of peace or being settled about?
Mhm. A resolution of sort.
Or am I reflecting in the moment and I'm
Mm.
looking to resolve that, those are going to have different outcomes and you're
Yes, they
going to
are.
be thinking about them differently.
Mhm.
And certainly there is research that is growing and budding about the addictive nature and instant
Oh,
gratification of social media. All of these things that you and I have just highlighted that perhaps fall on the side of no, don't post emotions on social media.
Mhm.
You're opening yourself up to greater vulnerability,
Mhm.
greater exposure,
Mhm.
that maybe new problems. But I think based on what we said at the beginning of the show, we are all on social media all the time. There isn't
Right.
necessarily getting away from it, whether or not we
Right.
post it. We
Mhm.
might see it.
Mhm.
So our exposure to it. Thoughts
Right.
on that?
Well, and the whole, I think a great point that you bring up is it doesn't have to be us, right, doing the acting. It's seeing people doing it. Well, and then what can I do as a response to that?
Yeah.
I see you, let's give an example. Like, let's say you post, and these are two very different examples. You post a new restaurant and you're like, I loved, whatever it was. My response to you could simply be like, oh my gosh, girl, I've never checked that out.
Yeah.
Like, definitely going to do that.
Yep.
Right? Just a word, like a very shallow level, like you validated, you saw it, but also like support. It's that other piece, though, of if you see someone who is posting this very deep emotion, right? I feel very lost right now. I feel angry. I feel sad. You, as a responder, rather than just like it or heart it, could say something, simply something as just supportive, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, or tell me more,
Mm-hmm.
or I felt that way too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you are not alone.
Right.
Simple,
something community
brief
building.
statements. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It is that idea of how many times, maybe I'm the only human in the world that does this. Someone will say something like, I am sad, but I know I have a support system or whatever, and I'll like it. And then I'm like, oh my God, did that person think that I like that they're sad? Or did I like
Or did I like the support? Which
yes.
part?
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm doing. That it's
no, you're not alone. I'm
it-
right there.
It's become like a minefield, right?
Yeah.
And it is that idea of the bottom line is whether you're doing this on action or reflecting in action, it is just the key of remembering how controlled is my audience
Mhm.
and am I okay with the responses that I get?
Yeah.
Right? Because you are taking a step to be vulnerable, which is huge.
Yep.
Right?
And could be connecting and could be community building, as we highlighted. It can be beautiful.
Yes, it can be
Yep.
beautiful, particularly for the people who don't live with others in their home.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So they're living alone. So it's not, I come home from work and I then vent to whoever, a partner, a child, whatever. It's that piece of that can be such a beautiful, and I say that to clients all the time who feel very isolated. You can find support
Yes.
from so many different things outside of a roommate or a loved one who lives under your roof.
Yep. I mean, it's so much of even why you and I are doing this show. We are hoping that
For
there are
sure.
people who listen to this
Yes.
who maybe in their own experience that find a sense of connection and community building and even listening to this.
Mhm.
So
That's what we want.
it does have capacity to be incredible. Have you heard of the term digital well-being?
I have.
Okay, well, so for those who maybe don't,
Yes.
digital
Tell me
well-being
more.
is our mental and emotional health as related to technology. And I created a very short, what I'm going to call quiz,
I love
so
your
to speak,
quizzes.
around assessing digital wellness for emotional sharing online. It's
Let's
4
do
items
this.
long, and the idea would be that before you use the social media, everyone, before you use the social media, ask yourself these things, and then you and I are going to talk about them for just a little bit.
Love it.
What am I doing this for? Is this bringing connection and joy to my life? How do I feel right now? Am I proud of what I'm saying? Is it who I really am?
Mm.
And to go back to that first one, what am I doing this for? Are we really using social media to detract or distract from having an in-person experience, as you and I mentioned around
Mhm.
avoidance? Is it our attempt to post actually avoiding something? Am I looking for feedback or attention? We're just trying to fight with someone. Am I
Prove a
displacing
point.
feels from an entirely different relationship onto a social media outlet? What
Mhm.
am I doing this for? What would you say?
Well, and all off of all those points, and they are so, I mean, I wish listeners could print this out and have this like next to their computer because they're all so important and incredible. It is that idea of sometimes it's okay, and I would add to one of these letters of, am I doing it to be validated?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I doing it just to be seen? It is okay. It is also okay. I don't want to have a negative connotation necessarily on words like distract,
No,
because sometimes we have an
that's a coping
awful
strategy. Yes, well said.
situation
Yep.
and all you need is 10 minutes on Instagram to scroll and be distracted. And that gets you, without knowing it, gets you out of that rut
Yep.
or that feeling. And so
It's the
just
knowing
being
that that's what we're doing. It's the understanding that the distraction from a thing
yes.
is a-okay. And if we're posting about our dinner to
Mhm.
distract us from how awful our day was,
Right.
that's all right.
Yes.
But you know that's what you were doing it for.
Amen.
And that brings to the second point of, is it bringing connection and joy to my life? Well, we could add a word to that of just like settledness. Is it bringing
Mhm. Yeah,
an element
peace.
of balance?
Mhm.
Do you unfollow or block the things that don't bring you joy? And how many of our social media emotional interactions are negative? Do you get jealous of what other people around you are getting likes about, or what you see others post, or how you feel about other people's pictures? Does it make you feel self-conscious? Is it bringing you community? And if it isn't, challenge yourself to not do it.
Right. It's a
Um,
simple, simple thing that takes less than a second to just unfollow,
mhm.
right?
And asking ourselves that, hearkening to dysregulation versus regulation. How do I feel right now? How, before you post, how do I feel right now? Am I stressed? Am I lonely? Am I anxious? Social media will very likely not help you navigate those agitated emotions.
They won't. And it's that idea of those are the moments where you're the most dysregulated, right? And
Yeah,
you're also the most vulnerable.
the most vulnerable, where you may post things that you have a new feel about, like regret,
Mhm.
later,
Mhm.
or you'll have said something that you and I hear often, an oversharing,
Mm.
that people, even if they take down the post, somebody's seen it.
Well, the impact has already been made,
Yes.
even if you take it away. And I say that to students all the time. Honey, you post something or a picture or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and you regret it and you take it off, it's already done the damage. People have already seen it, people have screenshotted it, whatever it is. It doesn't go away. So it's, if we can say anything to our audience, it's ask these questions before you post.
Right. And that leads to that last question to ask. Am I proud of what I'm saying? Is it who I really am?
Mhm.
Uh am I proud of what I'm saying? Would I be proud if it got reshared too? Because
Yes.
as you said, people have
Yeah.
screenshotted it. They maybe have shared it on their own social media. Your emotions become somebody else's emotions
Mhm.
to be doing whatever they feel like with. So when you say, is it who I really am I posting on social media something that I would say directly to someone?
And
Would I
how
t-
many people would honestly say no? No, I would not have the courage to say that to someone's face,
Mhm.
but I sure as heck will on a keyboard
On
or
a
on a
keyboard?
phone.
Right. And what that would mean relationally,
Mhm.
also for ourselves, in a living that question of like, well, would I say this to a person? If I
Mhm.
wouldn't say it directly to them, including myself, then maybe I should stop and not post this thing,
Yes.
because it might create a different feel than what we are trying to fill, satisfy, process online.
Mhm.
We're now adding something new in. And so often we don't even think about that before we're posting on, well, now I got like another issue in the bucket
Which
of
you've
me.
created, right?
Right.
Because of this. And I think what you just said is the most important thing is would I be proud of this? Am I going to be proud of myself? Or would a family member be okay seeing this? Would my mom be proud of me
Well said.
if she saw this post?
Well said. So much to think about here. We are headed to a commercial break, but when we come back, we will talk through listener questions on emotions shared via social media. Feels Out Loud will process your thoughts in just a moment.
From nobody else. All you got to do now. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know who to trust. All you see is danger.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through listener questions from you all. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or our topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or you can email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about. A huge thank you to our listeners who have sent in questions about their social media use and sharing feels online. That by itself is vulnerable.
Yes. And the idea of to narrow it down to 2 was almost an impossible task because this is such a huge universal thing.
So first question, I love social media and follow people who bring things up for me to think about. They find a sense of community in it. It's been a huge asset in my life, but what would I notice if it wasn't?
Mm,
And I would say, I think you might start to notice feelings show up elsewhere.
mhm.
We sometimes that occurs for us. Like, and I mean, emotions get highlighted in a different place. Like you might feel more tired in the morning,
Right.
or you might find yourself more negative in general. I think you mentioned this earlier in the show, Tara, that you might find yourself hyper focusing on social media too. What I did after my post, you might see that you want to share a ton about yourself and your feelings online, and then maybe keep up with who has commented and what they've shared.
Right.
That you're almost looking for what are people saying about it.
Are. And it is that piece too to be very mindful of, well, what if I noticed if it wasn't, or how would I notice? It's that idea of the moment you are done scrolling or looking at that, let's say Instagram, do I feel better than when I started?
Well said.
And if I don't, that did not serve me in the way it should have.
Yeah. Well, that's leads to second question. When something happens in my life, I get on social media to share it within seconds. It's the first thing I do. I don't even know what I'm looking for. And you're kind of responding to them.
Mhm.
Maybe look at your recent post. How did you feel after posting it?
Mhm. Yep.
My thought was to this listener, well said. Thank you for honoring yourself and owning this. This is hard that you get on social media within seconds. It's the first thing you do. You don't even know what you're looking for. I'm hearing that from maybe they want to know, what am I looking for? They want to start there, which I love. Pause before you post.
Needs to be a t-shirt. Pause before you post. It needs to be a bumper sticker, and it needs to be on our laptop.
Yes. And then think to this listener, think about that moment. Don't think about any other moment,
Right.
but just that one. And ask yourself, how do I feel right now? That's going to tell you something. If you can name a feeling in that moment, that's going to tell you something about what you might be looking for. What would you say?
I would say to this person, and I love that they asked this question, is have you created more disconnect in your life by posting it the minute it happens? Because what we've known as middle-aged women is when something happens in our life, we went to the people closest to us.
Yeah.
We told our friends and our family.
Mhm.
What I see the younger generation doing is this thing happens in their life and they post it. And sometimes their parents or loved ones find out along with the rest of the world.
Mhm.
And how is that creating more disconnect in your life? And so it's that piece of pausing before you post and thinking, is there anybody that should know this before I post?
Yeah, well said. And what you're also talking about is, have I let myself sit with a feeling
Right.
long enough? Because the function of the post, as we get
Mhm.
back to, might be, I can't tolerate this.
Mhm.
I can't tolerate this, and I have to have people join me.
Right.
And what you're saying is practicing sitting in that space
Yes.
for a period of time. Are there people who should know this and hear it?
Yes.
Also, I need to reflect on it myself first. Wow. Well, we are already at the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening this morning. Join us next week as we talk about apathy to empathy and the continuum of these emotional experiences. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself, everyone. Remember that connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.